Today's talk is not meant to be comprehensive. I could take clearly 3 days to talk about the criminal justice system, and we still have a ways to go. Today's talk is meant to be a teaser, so please forgive me if I underdevelop a couple things. I hope at the end, it'll be a conversation starter for you. So, a few years ago, a young man came into my office, one of my students, and he said to me, "Dr. Collier, I want to talk to you about careers." So I said, okay. I was excited. Love talking about careers, always awesome. And he said, so I need to think about some careers other than law enforcement. So then I paused, because I said, well, you've wanted to be a police officer your entire life. What changed? He said, it's really hard right now. With everything going on, with everything that I'm seeing in the media, it's really hard right now. Can we think through some other careers? So I paused there, because I knew what I said next was going to change his life and mine. See, before that, I had spent a lot of time teaching, yelling from the rooftops about one side of things. And I didn't do it because I leaned to one side or the other. It was more because I only heard one side being projected. And so I thought that it was my responsibility to make sure that the other side was heard. What I failed to realize is that in doing that, I had stepped out of the middle. So I told my student that day, be strong and courageous. Stand in the middle. You see, there are some things, it's challenging to get there. There's some things that keep us back from standing in the middle. Guilt, loneliness, and it's hard to get there. We feel guilty about the people who have raised us and cared for us in the communities that we identified with our entire lives, and we don't want to separate from them. When you're standing in the middle, it's lonely sometimes. You look around and you don't see many other people standing there with you. And it's hard to get there. Sometimes you have to be in some very uncomfortable circumstances and situations. See, I was raised in South Los Angeles during a time when there was lots of tensions between the community and law enforcement. Police officers entered my community with guns drawn, often, focusing much more on the enforcement side of things rather than putting bank money into the relationship bank with the community. And then at another point in my life, I ended up unemployed, student loan payments due, needing to pay my rent, and so I ended up on the complete opposite side as a police dispatcher. Circumstances are funny, I'm telling you. I call it a suddenly situation. Suddenly, I didn't have a job. Suddenly, I needed to pay my rent. Suddenly, I needed to eat. So suddenly, working with police officers wasn't that scary. In that position, I learned a lot, and it gave me a different perspective and appreciation for what law enforcement community does. So I found life tugging me forward to the middle. So sometimes when you're in a desperate situation, you do something, you find yourself somewhere you may not have ever placed yourself, take a look around, because life might be pulling you forward to the middle. So what is this middle? What is this middle? The middle is critically analyzing and assessing the situation from all perspectives. The middle is asking, what are the next steps? What are the next steps for me? What are the next steps for the human community? How do we find a way forward? The middle doesn't offer the luxury of being grounded all the time. If it's one thing that I can promise you about the middle, it's that there's change. Okay. So what are some characteristics to know when we're getting there? You know you're close to the middle when you have tenacity, when you're able to be flexible. Flexible about what you're hearing, flexible about what people are saying, flexible about even what you're experiencing. You know that you're getting to the middle when you're able to question your own beliefs. How did I come here? How did I get to this thought? Why do I think this way? Where did that come from? And you know that you're getting to the middle when you're ready to use your voice. I have to speak out now about the middle. So I teach now. I teach my students about getting and standing in the middle. And just last week, one of my students said to me, she says, you know, it's really hard, it's really tough being in the middle because everybody's yelling at me. Everybody's yelling all around. Everybody hates me. And no one's listening to anyone else. And my response, yeah, it's tough being in the middle. Never said it was going to be easy. See, it's hard to watch case after case and video after video and city after city of black and brown bodies, bloody, laying, dying in the streets at the hands of an officer who served as judge, jury, and executioner. It's hard being in the middle, watching police officers who are now afraid to even act because every single activity that they do is being heavily scrutinized. They're going home wondering, are my superior officers gonna have my back or are they gonna hang me out to dry? Am I gonna lose my job today because I followed protocol? Is my address gonna be broadcast on the internet? Is my family gonna be safe tonight? Standing in the middle is tough. I'm genuinely afraid, genuinely, when I'm pulled over by law enforcement officers, shaking in my boots sometimes. I try not to even think about my husband being pulled over. And when I think about what my husband and I have to tell our children to prepare them to be stopped by law enforcement, I lose my breath. But yet at the same time, just a few months ago, when my home was broken into, it was law enforcement officers who came out to my home, ushered my husband to safety, unscathed, searching the perimeter for the culprit. They protected us in our middle class, our upper middle class neighborhood. At this point, I bet you're wondering, what happened to that student sitting in my office? That young African-American male, first-generation college student who longed to be a police officer, but now felt conflicted? Well, I said to that young student, I said, I want you to think about a time that you had an encounter with law enforcement. I want you to visualize it, the picture in your head. So he did. And then I said, how might that experience been different if you had encountered someone like you? We need you in this profession, standing firmly in the middle. See, in the middle, you can lead from the middle. In the middle is where you can bring change. In the middle is where we resolve things. In the middle is where you heal our community. In the middle. There are influences sometimes, though, that halt us from standing firmly in the middle. Color of our skin, our political leanings. Sometimes these are internal influences and sometimes external. People have an expectation of where you're supposed to stand based off of these things before you've even said hello. Socioeconomic class status, I forgot to mention that one. Socioeconomic class status. Sometimes that will determine, or is supposed to determine, where you're supposed to stand. So I grew up in one class, and now the profession that I'm in places me in another class. Where am I supposed to stand? Or better yet, where do you stand? Too much, too close, too soon, I've gone too far? Okay, that's okay. I'll bring it on back. So, right about around here is where I challenge you to stand in the middle. Can you meet me there? Can you stay with me there? Can you support me there? Can you mentor someone there? I invite you to the middle. Thank you.